All right, welcome to Gordon's Garage over here at Never Satisfieds. We're going to work on this 50 sub. This will be the final video, hopefully. Let's see. It's a cold February morning. I guess it was 20 degrees this morning. We don't like that here in the South. What I'm going to do this morning, I guess, is go ahead and get the gauges mounted. Get them all wired up. Need to get our transmission tunnel back mounted so we can get our boot on. Let's see. Those gauges work with their own sending unit, so I've had to put the temperature sensor or sending unit in and then put the oil sending unit back there behind the distributor. So we'll get those installed and wired. We got the drive shaft in, still waiting on the proper drive shaft bolts. He's out getting those now, so that shouldn't be a problem. And then once we get to that point, get the fluids in the engine and get it fired up. Get the timing set, let it run through let the thermostat open and close, let it run through a warm-up procedure. Then it'll be off to the exhaust shop and to the glass shop to get some glass. Okay, I've got the first gauge cluster mounted in there. And it looks good, but I will tell you that it was a pain. Probably took me 30 minutes just to get that one mounted in there because to start with, this trim ring goes in first. And it doesn't set in that hole. It's a little too big for the hole. So I had to take the soft pad and go in there and just kind of round it out a little bit bigger before this trim ring would sit in there. And then these brackets here, if you can see this little stud right here, there's 4 of those, 1, 2, 3, 4 that held the original instrumentation in. Well, these brackets bolt to that stud and push against this trim ring to hold that trim ring in. Those brackets are too long, and the holes are too small in them. So I had to re-drill the hole and rebend the bracket and cut the bracket shorter after I rebent it to get the right distance to no light in there, to get the right distance to hold that trim ring in. So it's not sized properly. It's a nice looking kit. I hope they function well, but they're not sized properly. All right, we just set this thing on the ground and it looks like we're just about 1 inch low in the back. So we're gonna change the rear blocks from 3 to 2 inch. Get that thing up 1 inch in the back. But first we're gonna set the hood on there. Okay, so we did get the 2-inch blocks installed. Took 3-inch lowering blocks out and put 2 inches in. That raised the back 1 inch. And now it definitely looks right. Before it was leaning to the back pretty bad. I think we're in the zone now. We got the hood installed. So here I am on the 50. Spent a little more time on it today. Finished getting the gauges in. Got them all wired up. See the lights come on. I got the wiring under the dash tidied up. Nothing else hanging down. I put a little fuse block right up there by the left knee. And simplified the wiring the best I can, and it's hanging up there, zip tied and taped and stuff. And I'll put a loom on that, a cover on that wiring to the high beam switch. I'm trying to get this to the point here in a minute where I'm going to crank it back up. We hadn't cranked it up since the first initial testing of the engine. I've got our power steering all hooked up. We did get the wiring to the sending units. Let's see, there's no reason why this thing shouldn't fire and probably go in gear. And I'm not going to drive it today, but I would like to crank it and just see if it goes in gear. I don't remember. No, I didn't wire the choke. That's the one thing I didn't wire. That's fine though. I can get that later. The electric choke. Let's see. Make sure we don't have any leaks of any kind, especially around our transmission. Don't seem to. But she does not want to stay idled. So we need to figure out what's going on there. Goes in gear. All right, that's enough of that. At least we know we can crank it and move it around. So it's going to have to go to the exhaust shop now and get some exhaust so we can properly tune it. It's just hard to very hard to get the thing tuned right with it being open headers like that. Open headers blowing right against our transmission lines and those kind of things. I can't get the ignition timing set right. So this will probably be, I know I keep saying this, but I think this will be a part 4 just to get you guys some content, because it's got to go to the exhaust shop to get exhaust. It's got to go to the glass shop to get new glass. So it's probably going to be a little bit before we actually get the vehicle back. So we'll move on to some other projects, which we already have. And I'm kind of excited to show you what else we're doing. But for right now, I think this will be the end of this, well, part 4 of this series until we get it back from those other guys. And I hope you've really enjoyed this series. I've tried to be as informative as I can. I know you guys are commenting how much you appreciate that. And I've had a good time doing this. We were missing this one bracket here, or the original bracket that comes off the original manifolds to the back of the power steering pump. So I made that little bracket earlier to keep that power steering pump lined up. And we had a broken power steering bolt in the water pump. And I welded a nut to that earlier today and was able to turn that out. That worked out good. All right. 1950-ish GMC to S10 swap. Oops. Really, really appreciate you guys watching. Where's the exhaust come out at? All right, so we've got the 50 running. He had exhaust put on it. We're tuning it out right now. And it's actually running pretty good. We're messing with the timing, trying to get it right. Timing cover don't match the balancer, so we're just guessing. Playing with it by ear. At least we can get our RPMs close. And it's going to feel a little rougher just because of solid mounts, you know. Yeah, it's a little lazy. What about that? Goose it. Cut it off and crank it back up. Timing's a little high. The carburetor seems goofy too.
Well, it might need a set of plugs in it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very good possibility because we didn't.
It's not far off, but
no.
it's
I pulled the timing up though. I'm gonna pull it back down just a little bit. See, I've got one right there that's. But I hadn't seen any spark junking out of it. I'm sure it's still. And that's, you know, let me go over the wires one more time too, make sure I don't have one. All right, so we was running this thing, and it just didn't seem right. It just felt kind of lazy. A little bit of a miss to it. Not really a miss, but a surge, like it had a vacuum leak. So I'm all over looking for vacuum leaks. Can't find anything, but I can slightly hear a rocker arm tapping. And number 3, intake was loose. So, I mean, there's a couple reasons that could be loose. Either the cam is flat, or it just never was adjusted properly, or it just came loose. But I pulled all the spark plugs out, and it's got these Excel spark plugs. Every one of them's just sooty. You can see. So every one of them's fouled out. This is supposedly, he bought this engine with very low miles on it. It's a Jegs crate engine, and I have no reason to doubt that. It's a Jegs intake on it, and very clean inside, so not many miles. But we're starting to wonder if this thing wasn't broken in properly, didn't have the proper break-in procedure on that camshaft and flattened those lobes out. I hope not. Pulled the valve cover off, and it was double gasketed. One stiff rubber and one real flexible rubber. So that was not good. But we did notice that those valve cover bolts were loose on this side. So we feel like somebody has already been in there. There's just too many little signs pointing toward maybe that camshaft is already wore out. I don't know. We're going to put a new set of plugs in it. I'm going to go through and adjust all the rockers properly. See what happens. But this is the gamble you take when you buy used engine. Of course, it's not that used. And then why did whoever had the engine not use it but for so long? And why was this valve cover loose? And why was it double gasketed? Somebody's been in there. Jags wouldn't have done that. I don't think they would have double gasketed that with rubber. We're going to put cork back on it. I don't like those rubber gaskets on a small block Chevrolet. Not on the old style heads. I like to use a cork. All right, so we'll see. So we are suspecting that we have a flat cam or a camshaft with a wore out lobe on it. So I'm going to pull this top off of this engine, I guess. Pull the intake off, get the rockers out. Number 3 lifter especially. Get those out and see if I can see any damage to that camshaft. Well, I'm pulling the intake off of here, and the first thing I notice is a rag in the intake chamber. Yep, freaking rag caught up in the valves. And that's not one of our rags either. There's one up in the intake manifold there. Look, it's coming out the other side. That is crazy. That rag is going all the way through. I bet you that rag is under that carburetor. Yeah, I don't know if you can see down in there well enough, but that rag is wrapped up around that valve. So that valve, the valve's shut against the rag. Probably part of that rag has started pulling its way down into the cylinder. I don't know how we're going to get that out. All right, I've got the bolts lifted out of this carburetor. Let's see what we see. Yep, there she is. Rag down in there. Did we do that? I don't remember having any rags like that, but oh yeah. Yeah, we do. Look. Freaking yellow stripe rag. Yellow stripe rag. Okay, so I got all the rag pieces out. That one there was actually stuck in the exhaust valve. You can see the valve seat indentation, so I had to tighten number 3 exhaust and intake down, get both of those valves open before I could pull the rest of that rag out. I took shop air and blew through the cylinder and up through the valve, so feel pretty good that we got it all. So getting ready to put this baby back together. I pulled a couple of lifters out, and the cam looks good. Bottom of the lifters look good, no mushrooming going on. So that little problem that we had was apparently our fault. Right now, I don't like rags in the intake. All right, so we've got this thing running really well after we got past the rag in the intake and cylinder head episode. It's running really good, but we've got a small hole in the back of our power steering reservoir. So I'm taking that loose now to see what I'm going to have to do about that. Hopefully I can patch it some way. We won't have to have a whole new reservoir. But once I get that done, we should be able to set this puppy down and drive it, or at least move it around. We still need windows. Just want to get it to the window shop. So we're just almost done with it. Okay, so I've got some good news. That hole right there, believe it or not, it's not actually a puncture. I was thinking we punctured the tin reservoir. It's actually a bolt that's missing. So I should be able to just put a bolt in it and we'll be fine. first drive, I'm not going. No seat belts. She looks good though. Man, yeah.
Transmission's goofy. Like to drive. I don't know if it's TV cable or vacuum line.
There's no vacuum in that transmission. All right, we're doing our first drive cycle. Scott just drove it, said the transmission was goofy. It's that 700 R4. If the TV cable is not adjusted right, then it will not shift. It'll act goofy. But we'll see. Ride's nice though. Plenty of suspension. No windshield. That makes for an interesting drive. Plenty of power. The timing's probably low on it. I know I've got it close, but it's probably a little bit low. Oh, Harry. Do a little U-turn in this Methodist church parking lot. I don't think they'll mind too awfully bad if we don't do any burnouts or anything. It's shifting. It seems to be shifting in all the gears, but it's just kind of a slow shift. I'll have to go back and do a little bit of adjusting on that TV cable. Yeah, it's got a big time slip from first to second. But it runs good, steers good, brakes good. Brake pedal's too far from the gas pedal for me, but for the owner of this truck, he's a left foot braker. So it should be perfect for him. Well, after dropping it, I adjusted the TV cable, which is for 700R4. That cable, when adjusted right, tells the, well, it shifts, it controls the shift. And after adjusting that a little bit, it made it better. I think we had it too tight, which we did not adjust that. That's just, we put it back together the way that it came. Of course, after taking all the bracketry and everything loose, you know, I'm sure some of that is placed a little differently. So I gave that cable a little more length. It made it shift not so slow. So I think I'm just going to give it a little more length. And I know that all that needs the proper geometry with the throttle swing and all that kind of stuff, but we're way beyond that now, so we just do the best we can. The brakes are working really good. Steering is good, no leaks, but my throttle came loose. The gas pedal here, I've just had that attached with self-tappers, and that's just not enough. So I'm gonna pull that loose and see what I need to do there. If I can get a nut and a bolt in there, or weld a couple of studs to mount that to before I go on the next test drive, because if I test drive this again, I'm afraid I'm gonna lose my throttle.